Wow, financial statement fraud. That is the biggie because this is where this is the type of fraud where the median loss is the largest. So here are our modules for this chapter. In the first module, we'll introduce We'll introduce the topic of financial reporting fraud. Module 2, we'll look at the conceptual framework of accounting, including concepts and principles that guide preparers of financial statements. Oh, yeah. Okay, now I'm remembering this chapter. There's a lot of this chapter I'm going to be able to jump through because, again, this textbook was written with the possibility that there are folks with no accounting background taking this course. So folks who are in, asset control or law enforcement. So it goes into a lot of basic accounting. I'm going to assume that everyone here has got some basic accounting knowledge or you wouldn't be in this class, right? Okay. So I'm going to skip over that stuff. I'm sure every one of you, I know you all have had accounting courses, so I can skip over it with confidence in that. And of course, you're students at Governor State University, so you know this stuff well. Okay. So module 2, going to kind of fly through that. You don't need, general guidance as to accounting. Module 3, then, we'll take a closer look at the 5 major methods for perpetrating financial reporting fraud: revenue manipulation, timing differences, concealed, as to say, unrecorded or unreported, liabilities and expenses, inappropriate asset valuations, and number 5, inadequate or improper disclosures. And again, disclosures, basically we're talking about the notes in the back of the financial statements, which are so very important. Module 4 will look at the primary methods and techniques used in practice to detect financial reporting irregularities. And then module 5, again, we're going to look at that human factor, particularly as how it relates to the deterrence of financial reporting. Module number 1, who, why, and how. Okay. Pressure on upper management to show earnings. Okay, I'm turning the camera back on for this one because this one, in the last few decades, corporations, and there have been consultants out there who made a lot of money off of this idea, have said, look, if you want to, excuse me, I open up another can of Pepsi here. Consultants have been paid a lot of money. It's like, if you want your management to perform the way your shareholders want them to perform, you gotta get management in on, get it, as I say, get some skin in the game. So what do the shareholders want? They want good return on their investment. They want to see good, EPS, earnings per share, et cetera, et cetera. So your top, C-suite folks, the top management folks, half of their compensation will be from a salary. The other half will be from incentives, bonuses, stock options, things like that are dependent on them making a good return for the shareholders. Great. As a result, big corporations, it's like 50% or more of the compensation of top management comes from incentives, comes from bonuses, comes from stock options, etc. And so if you got a stock option, you want to be able to cash it out eventually and make big money off of it. You're going to get that stock price for that company to go up on Wall Street, which you may or may not control, right? So you can do the best you can with your company, but if something happens in geopolitics and they cut off the Straits of Hormuz or whatever, now suddenly the price of oil's gone up and your company is dependent on oil and you couldn't control that. But you're not going to get a bonus. You're not going to get, your stock options are going to plummet. So if you want to make money from those stock options, from those bonuses and such, you can one or two things. Work really hard to give the shareholders what they want, or you manipulate the financial statements so that pardon my language, but so the bozos on Wall Street will bid up the price of your stock. And I've probably heard me say things in this class and had me in other classes. I don't have a lot of respect for the folks on Wall Street, mainly because, the folks on Wall Street are, financial folks who very often, just didn't have the brain power to be accountants. So they went into finance. Finance professors hate me when I say that, but and as a result, sometimes it can be fairly easy to defraud Wall Street, to give them a set of financial statements that may not really make sense if they really knew accounting and looked into it, but it looks good. They've got their programs, their apps, okay, that they run the numbers through, and they go, aha, this company's price should be this amount of shares, and it's only this, so we're going to bid up until we get that price. And yes, God bless the algorithms, and so it can be somewhat easy to defraud Wall Street. So again, management has been put in a position where they have a choice. Even if they work really hard, outside influences can have terrible effects on that company. So we'll manipulate the numbers instead. So there's that pressure on upper management to show earnings. And, it's like, if you don't show earnings, you'll get fired. It's funny. One of the fraud cases I talk about going back a few decades was MCI WorldCom, which was a long distance telecommunications company. And they were essentially cooking their books, okay? Financial fraud, financial statement fraud. Over at AT&T, the board of AT&T would call the CEO of AT&T in and go, hey, why can't you bring us these returns that MCI is getting? And CEO of AT&T would say, we're doing the best we can. We're doing new programs. Not good enough. You're not doing as good as MCI WorldCom. You're fired. And they'd hire a new CEO. And the year goes by, or 2 years go by, and same thing. Your numbers are still not good enough. You're fired. And they hired another guy. And then the federal government arrested the head of MCI for financial fraud. And the board was like, oops. You can only imagine how those former CEOs of AT&T felt, right? They were fired for not being able to come up with financial statements as good as the fraudulent ones put out by a competitor. Oops. In any event. Okay. What else? The subjective nature of the way books and records are kept. Our generally accepted accounting principles, as used in the United States of America, which I personally prefer to the International Financial Reporting Standards, which are a little more, to use a technical term, loosey-goosey. We've got real rules, a lot of rules in there, but we still have thousands of times in those rules that allow you to use estimates, to give you different options as how to do things, how to report things. I used to get, I don't get it anymore, I'm sure they're still doing it. I used to get invitations in the mail for a company that would conduct seminars, multi-day seminars for chief financial officers, controllers, etc., on how to, I forget the term they use, but essentially how to massage your accounting, accounting tricks that you can use that are totally legitimate to make your numbers look better. We know the tricks that, it's sort of like, in you're doing your income taxes. What can we do legally where I can be allowed to pay less in income taxes? And they would teach these seminars. I love this. They would teach it in the winter on board cruise ships in the Caribbean. And, and you can bring along a spouse or whomever, and they teach you how to essentially use the little loopholes in GAAP to massage your numbers to make them look better. Okay. GAAP has a lot of gray areas. After the Enron scandal, some Wall Street idiot wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal talking about, we can't allow this going on because they're a bunch of fraudsters and because accounting is all black and white. No, it's not. And by now, hopefully in your accounting education, you've learned that, no, it's not. There are a lot of areas where we do have some subjective ideas, subjective rules. We have estimates, which can be manipulated. So no, it's not all black and white. Only one of those Wall Street idiots who weren't smart enough to take accounting would say that. Okay, then there are three general questions that go to the heart of these crimes. Who commits financial statement fraud? Why do people commit financial statement frauds? And how do people commit financial statement frauds? Okay, turning off the camera now. All right. So, who commits it? Senior management. For the most part, yeah. The folks up on top, especially the really big financial statement frauds. But it can also be mid and lower level employees, especially mid-level folks who's maybe they're the head of a division or a department and they have to make those numbers look good or they lose their job. So you do it. Also, organized criminals. We know there have been incidents of organized crime getting involved in financial statement fraud. Why would they get involved with that? Because it pays a lot if you do it right. Excuse me. You get a company to issue fraudulent financial statements and their stock price goes up, and you bought a bunch of that stock, price goes up, and then you cash in and you make a lot of money and you walk away. And unlike other organized crimes, drug dealing, etc., no one bleeds. Okay, usually. Okay, there's usually no violence connected with this. So it's good in that way. All right. Although there have been instances of financial crimes, we talk about white collar crime, and then when women do it, we call it pink collar crime. When lower level employees do it, sometimes called blue collar crime. And then when there is murder involved, it's called a red collar crime, color of blood. So you might encounter that term in the fraud field. Okay. Why do they do it? Okay. Well, you have senior managers and business owners who want to cook the books for several reasons: to conceal true business performance, to preserve personal status and control, and to maintain personal income and wealth. We can better deter and detect fraud if we understand the different pressures that senior managers and business owners face that might drive them to commit fraud. And this is why it's so important that if you are working as an auditor for a company, you get out there early on and get to know the company. Okay, understand its vibe, feel about what's going on there. Okay, and if you find that everyone is just under these pressures to meet these numbers, that's a bad sign. That's a red flag right there. Okay. Financial statement schemes are generally tailored to the particular circumstances in the organization. Common reasons why senior management might overstate performance. Again, meet or exceed earnings or revenue growth expected by those dreaded Wall Street stock analysts. Comply with loan covenants. Again, if your company's taking out loans, the banks might put in You have to come up with a return on investment, return on assets, a revenue number, an earnings per share of this, that, or the other thing, or we call the loan in immediately. Or we rewrite the loan, but we're going to charge you a $250,000 rewriting fee. Okay. Increase the amount of financing available for those asset-based loans. So you overstate the value of assets, so you can use that asset as collateral to get a bigger loan. Meet a lender's criteria for granting or extending loan facilities. Meet corporate performance criteria set by a parent company. Meet your own personal performance criteria to trigger those performance-related compensation or earn out payments. Okay, so it's kind of like an athlete. A baseball player gets a big bonus if they hit 20 home runs during the year. Well, you'll get a big bonus if you can get the sales revenue above $15 million. Well, again, you can do it the honest way, or we can make the numbers hit 15 million some other way. Support the stock price in anticipation of a merger, acquisition, or sale of personal stock holdings. On the flip side, maybe you're owner of a company and it's become a target for takeover. Well, maybe you want to manipulate your financial statements numbers downward so you're no longer look like a good target. And then show growth to support a securities offering or sale of business. Again, I had asked all of you earlier to watch the videos I had up there for Crazy Eddie. Okay, and what they did was exactly that. Okay, they at first were embezzling funds to not pay Uncle Sam, and then they started putting the money back in and doing other things to make them look like a growth stock, bid up their financial statements, and then go public. And that's where they made the real money, until Eddie was caught cheating on his wife, and his wife and her family blew the whistle on it all. Okay. Why would senior management understate performance? Again, this kind of goes to what talking about. Defer surplus earnings to the next accounting period. So we did really good this year. We might not next year. Let's push things off to the future. To take all possible write-offs in one big bath now, so that your future earnings will look consistently higher. So like take a big loss this year, and then over the next 10 years, we'll be looking good. Okay. Reduce expectations now, so future growth will be better perceived and rewarded. Preserve a trend of consistent growth and avoid volatile results. Reduce the value of an owner-managed business for purposes of a divorce settlement. Oh, I actually was involved in a case involving that. I'll tell you, I remember somebody told me that, a statistic of how many lawyers get shot every year by a client. And you'd be surprised. These usually are not criminal defense lawyers. More likely, they're divorce lawyers. Okay. It's a very risky occupation. And to reduce the value of a corporate unit whose management is planning on a buyout. So again, maybe management is, talking amongst themselves saying, hey, we can buy this company ourselves, but we have to make the financials look bad. Then the price of the company stock comes down, then we can buy it at a real cheap rate. Okay. How do people do it? You play the accounting system. You beat the accounting system, or you just go outside the accounting system. Those ways. So, big question is public versus private company financial reporting fraud. Remember, when we talk about public company, if you want to, tie it to federal law, a public company is a company whose securities, stock, bonds, whatever falls under that label securities, are traded in interstate commerce. Why? Because again, the federal government can only get involved in interstate commerce, which basically, if you are any size, you are involved in interstate commerce. And but there are, loopholes for a small business. It's owned by family members who all live in the same state. Okay, that's not a public company. So, excuse me. There's a stronger anti-fraud environment in public companies, which appears to lead public companies, financial reporting fraud perpetrators to use timing differences to commit their fraud. Excuse me. Ooh. So public company fraud on average involves larger fraud teams circumventing stronger controls. Public company frauds are larger than those in private companies, mostly because private companies are smaller. The larger size of public companies' financial statement fraud, financial reporting fraud cases may make them more likely to be detected by formal means rather than by accident, which is often how it happens in private companies. Okay. And then we